Hello and welcome. As a kid, I used to love letting my imagination run wild and used to build these fantastical worlds made of Lego, set in some of my favorite stories and universes like Star Wars. And I used to spend hours, days, and even years creating these fantastical stories, creating campaigns where I was in charge of my own clone army and shooting Legos and having dogfights and everything. It was absolutely amazing. And as I was growing older, I even got a love for video games, which introduced me to one of my all-time favorite Lego games of just period. Lego Star Wars 2 for the Nintendo DS. It was everything I ever dreamed of a Lego game. But grown up now. I've learned that the PlayStation 2 versions were amazing. I also learned that a few years down the line they also made Lego Star Wars The Complete Saga, where it had all the Star Wars movies at the time. Which now brings me back to Lego Star Wars 2 for the DS. Is it as fun and imaginative as I remembered, or maybe it should just be left in the pages of history? Let's find out.
Check out Kid Kong from us at 16-Bit Games. It's a simple arcade game with a unique controller that allows you to play in both landscape and portrait. It's available for free on Android, so check it out in the links in the description. Lego Star Wars is a 3D platforming game, but instead of being generic characters from that franchise, like, let's say, Harry Potter, you're Lego versions of those characters. And because it's Lego, the game can be a little bit silly. The Nintendo DS version is much in the same way, but instead of being built by the UK-based developer Traveller's Tale, it was handed off to the Washington-based developer Amaze Entertainment, who also handled the Game Boy Advance port. And honestly, they were able to take what was a pretty complicated game on the console, squeeze it, compress it, and put it onto the Nintendo DS without much fault. The faults within Lego Star Wars 2 aren't where you typically would find faults in a third-party licensed title. Typically they're in the controls, or the gameplay, or maybe the graphics. But instead, the faults in Lego Star Wars 2 are actually in the glitches and bugs which riddle this entire game. There are lots of graphical glitches, sometimes there's cutscene glitches, and other times just entire sections of the game either won't work or you can't unlock every single minifigure piece because they just refuse to show up. Bugs like this littered the entire game, and unfortunately a lot of the time it does ruin the immersion of the game. You want to be in a little world that the game wants to create for you. You want to pretend that you all playing with these little figures or you're working in this little world, but instead you rip from it the minute you realize that Han Solo just disappeared, and it does get very, very annoying. But surprisingly, what isn't annoying is the levels. They are actually quite fine. In my opinion, sometimes even better than the actual games. But there's one or two times where the challenge is a little bit difficult. The only level I can really complain about is the 4th chapter of episode 6. There's a large maze section which is very easy to get lost or completely disoriented in just because there's no clear path forward. Other than that, the levels are fine. Controls is another aspect of a game where it could rip you from it, but in this game, on an original Nintendo DS, it surprisingly controls well, even though a game like this sort of demands to be played with an analog stick of some sort. Which is a bit of a problem, because once you move to a system like the Nintendo 3DS, where there is a circle pad, but you can't use it in this game because it just mimics a D-pad, it becomes very, very, very annoying, because you want to use it because you think it gives you the finer control, but it just doesn't. If you are playing this game and want to play this game, my advice, get an original DS and play it on there, because the temptation to switch to the circle pad is a little bit more than I expected. The music in LEGO Star Wars 2 sounds really close to the Game Boy Advance version, but there's subtle differences in the instrumentation that it actually makes it sound a lot better, especially when you compare the two side by side. It's like Star Wars Episode 3 for the Game Boy Advance versus Star Wars Episode 3 for the DS. Subtle improvements that make a heck of a difference. The story in LEGO Star Wars 2 sometimes works really well, like you're playing with actual Legos, but other times it feels like your younger sister came in who's playing with your teddy bear and decides that a teddy bear is an appropriate moment to play with. The same could be said about LEGO Star Wars 2 for the DS. A lot of the time it does feel like what a LEGO Star Wars game on the DS should feel like, but other times the slapstick is thrown at inopportune moments or in inappropriate places, throwing the immersion of "this is LEGO in Star Wars" completely out the window. There's sections where I just want to shout at Darth Vader, "Those are the droids you're looking for." Or I watch in awe wondering what the heck is befolding me, what scene in the movie is this possibly? There's a lot of sections like this throughout the entire game, and it does kind of pull you out from "this is Star Wars" as LEGO, and this is the official story which we're retelling. It doesn't feel like that. It feels more along the lines of, we were told to make Star Wars and this is the best that we can come up with. The aesthetics in LEGO Star Wars 2 for the DS is one of the few things that Amazed got perfectly. These look like Legos. They just look like a pixelated version of the actual LEGO figures which you have at home. The models are detailed as they possibly could get, and they look, feel, play exactly as you would imagine it to. As a Star Wars game, LEGO Star Wars 2 for the consoles does a better job at following the story than the DS version, but as a LEGO game, the DS version is superior in every conceivable way. Creativity, it gives you a lot more options. Just take a look at how you can customize your own character in the console version versus the entire toy chest that they give you on the DS version. And stuff like this is littered throughout the entire game. Free play mode, you have access to every single conceivable character in the game versus the randomly assorted characters given to you. You have more options with spaceships, including an AT-ST and a speeder, so you can freaking fly an AT-ST during the Death Star run. That is amazing, and stuff like this just makes the DS version unique in its own way. But the game itself is still a glitch-filled bugfest. The console version is seriously the more stable and better version, and on the go, there's a PSP version which you can go after. But none are as unique, as different, or as fun as the actual DS game. I still play this game to this day, and I had an absolute blast making this video. If you see it for a good price, I'd highly recommend you picking this up. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and take care.